Hello everyone, it is Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So here I am a few days late for my progress report or review of my December currently inked. And I know there is one pen that is completely used up, so I won't even be able to write with that pen. I'll have to write with a different pen in order to do the review. Let's get started. The first pen that was inked is my Esterbrook ST Honeycomb, and it has a needlepoint nib. And it is inked up with Colorverse Golden Gate Bridge. I actually finished this sample in the middle of the month. Hold on, I'm just checking what my rating system is because I've forgotten. It feels like, oh, ink, flow, comfort. So we look at the ink, what I think of the ink, flow, and the comfort of this pen. So right off the bat, comfort of the ST is a 10, always a 10. The flow, for me, a 10 out of 10 flow would be that it's above average, whereas this, because the nib is needlepoint, it's not as wet. So you actually do need a wetter ink for that. So the flow of the ink and the nib combined, I'd probably give an 8. An 8. And the ink itself, I would probably give an 8 as well. I feel like I'm being very harsh today. So, whoopsie. So the ST is always my most comfortable pen. And the ink is not one that I would normally gravitate towards, but I do like the color. I love the nib. It's both toothy, so a lot of feedback, but not scratchy. And still smooth. It's hard to explain, but I really love it. And I felt that I was always wanting to write with this because I loved the crisp line, but I also loved the feeling of the nib on the page. So that is the first pen. That is the Esterbrook ST Honeycomb with a needlepoint nib with Colorverse Golden Gate Bridge. The second pen inked up is my Leonardo Furore in Ginger, and this has a fine nib. This was purchased from Muse Pens, so this is a very recent pen as well, and this has Diamine Ink Vent Celebration. So this month I really wanted to try and use as many Diamine Ink Vent inks as possible. So the ink is an orange with a bit of shimmer. I'll give the ink itself about an 8, just because I didn't think that the shimmer was very consistent throughout the writing sample. The flow, I would also give probably actually I would give the flow a 9, and then the comfort level of this a 9 as well. The ink is pretty, but shimmer is inconsistent, which really drives me crazy. Good smooth flow out of this fine nib, and the Furore size is actually very, very comfortable, but if I was gonna be picky, I can actually feel the step between the grip and the body. Otherwise, a really great combination. So that is the Leonardo Furore with Diamine Ink Vent Celebration. The third pen I inked up is this Hogtown Pens On the Edge of Oopsie, and it's in a taper medium model, and it has a fine architect nib on there, and this was inked with Vinta Parole. I'll actually show you let's show you this here. Like, this is actually a really beautiful green. It's got gold shimmer and red sheen, but there's none left. I managed to use up the whole sample. Like, there's none left. So I'm gonna write the review of this with a different pen. Okay, I'm writing it with my SD. So the ink I'm giving this ink a 9. And then the flow, I loved the flow of this, so I'm going to give the flow a 10, and then the comfort level is about a 9 as well. And the ink, I loved Vinta Parole, even with the sheen. Normally have a hard time with sheen, but the shimmer actually helped counteract some of that sheen. The shimmer was great, but it was inconsistent in the writing, and I really love the taper medium model from Hogtown pens. It was comfortable, and I could write 3 to 4 pages comfortably. So that is my Hogtown pens in taper medium in the On the Edge of Oopsie with the Fine Architect, but I have no ink to show you because I've already used it up. The next pen I have inked up is my Vanishing Point, or my Pilot Vanishing Point in the Forest Green, and this is from Muse Pens. This is the 30th anniversary of Pilot in Taiwan, and this is inked up with Diamine Ink Vent Bliss. The ink is pretty, but it's just kind of meh, nothing too special. And it was about average flow on this very smooth Pilot 18K fine nib. This is my favorite nib. And I can write 1 to 2 pages comfortably. And I really love the matte finish of this pen. So that is the Pilot Vanishing Point with Diamine Ink Vent Bliss. The next pen that I inked up was my Lebon 325, and this has a medium stub, and I inked Diamine Ink Vent upon a star. I really liked this ink. I'll show you a quick close-up here. It's this really pretty blue with sheen and that gold shimmer, and I thought it was perfect in this stub nib. This ink is absolutely stunning. I did have some flow issues at the beginning, but once they were fixed, the flow was perfect. Shimmer not as consistent as I would normally like, so that meant some of the sheen kind of took over. But overall, this pen is almost as comfortable as the Esterbrook SD. So that is the Lebon 325 Cambridge with Diamine upon a star. The next pen that I had inked up was this On a Whim Woodworks in the Cool Tone Primary Manipulation. And just look at this pen. This is one of the first hand-turned pens that I ever purchased last year, and I love it. Well, okay. I love the resin and I love the way it looks, but I'm just going to show you here. This is inked with Diamine Ink Vent One More Sleep, and just briefly looking at that color. It is really pretty, and it's more like a blurple than a purple. The ink is a very pretty blurple, nothing too crazy about it. Felt a little bit dry and inconsistent in saturation at times, and the step on the pen between the section and the grip cuts right into my thumb and forefinger, which is not comfortable. But otherwise, it's a beautiful pen and one of the first hand-turned pens that I got. So I am split on how I feel about this pen at the moment. So that is my On a Whim Woodworks Cool Tone Primary Manipulation. I forgot to say it has an extra fine Bach nib on there, and it has Diamine Ink Vent One More Sleep. Next pen that was inked up was my Narwhal or Narwhal Voyage Tromso. Let's just take a moment to appreciate the beautiful, beautiful resin. And this is inked up with Diamine Ink Vent Memory Lane. Just showing you a quick swatch of that, like this really pretty purple with silver shimmer. This ink is beautiful, but I do need to agitate the pen a bit to get even amount of shimmer in the writing sample. And I'm wondering if I'm just being really picky about that. The flow was actually inconsistent at times. There were times it felt as if I should have been pushing down harder, and I know not to do that, but it did feel as if I had to push harder to get a better flow. This model though, the Voyage Tromso, is very comfortable in my hand, and I can write comfortably with it for about 3 to 4 pages. So that is the Narwhal Voyage Tromso, and this has a fine nib, and it has Diamine Ink Vent Memory Lane. The next pen is one of my newest pens. This is the Leonardo Momento Zero in the Strata Quartz, and it has an extra fine Jovo nib. This was an exclusive from Stilo e Stile in Italy, and oh my gosh, I just can't with this pen. It's so beautiful. And this was actually the pen that I used in my 5-year journal, and I loved writing with it every day. And just a quick peek at that ink there, just the shimmer. It is beautiful. As I was writing, I realized I meant to put the silver burl strata quartz in here, and this is actually, I'm writing with the Leonardo Momento Zero in Via Latea. Oh my goodness. But anyway, whoops. I love the ink in this one, the Diamine Ink Vent Yule Log. The shimmer was consistent, even in an extra fine nib. And the Momento Zero, is almost perfect except for the tiny step between the grip and the body. Otherwise, I really loved this combo. So this is actually this ink. So this is the Leonardo Stilo e Stile exclusive Momento Zero in Via Latea with an extra fine nib in Diamine Ink Vent Yule Log. There we go. And what should have been the last, or the second last one, is now the last one. This is my silver burl pen in the Strata Quartz, and this has an extra fine nib as well, an extra fine Yogo nib. And this one has Diamine Ink Vent Dusted Truffle. And I'll show you Dusted Truffle here. So that's the difference between Yule Log and Dusted Truffle. And Dusted Truffle is a lighter ink with silver shimmer, whereas Yule Log had almost like that coppery shimmer in here, which I think is why I loved it so much. This ink was pretty, but I felt that the shimmer almost overpowered the base color, so it was almost as if you could only see the silver shimmer. This flowed really well actually out of the extra fine nib. Now this pen is a little bit bigger than I'm normally used to, but I can write about 1 to 2 pages with it comfortably, which is why I rated it a 9. So this is the Silver Burl Strata Quartz in the extra fine nib with Dusted Truffle. So there are all my pen and ink pairings for the month of December, and I'm trying to figure out which one came out on top, but I really think it was probably the Leonardo Momento Zero in the Via Latea with the Yule Log. I think that one was probably my favorite combination out of the whole month. But overall, actually, I had really, really good experiences with all of these pens. I don't think there was one that was a really bad experience. Probably the least favorite would have been the On a Whim Woodworks pen, just because of that step. That really affects my overall experience if the writing isn't comfortable. So now let's go over to my update, and I'll update you on what I acquired, what I got rid of. Let's go ahead and do that. So the first category that I'm going to be doing in my December update is pens. And the main reason that I do this is to make sure that I am keeping track of what I am accumulating, what I am selling or giving away, just so that I could really be aware of what I have in my collection. So I had purchased one pen in the month of December, and that was my Pens by Casey. Video coming. Actually, the video would have already been published by now. I was gifted one pen, which is the Parker Slim Fold, or the Parker VS, and I gave one fountain pen away, which was actually the Sailor Pro Gear in the white rose gold. Next, in terms of inks, I actually was very good this month with ink samples. I purchased 0 ink samples this month, and then I was gifted 5 ink samples from my Secret Santa, and then I gave away 7 ink samples. Part of those are used and given away, but that's how many were out of my collection. And then in terms of ink bottles, there was 1 ink bottle that I purchased. There were 3 ink bottles that were gifted to me by my Secret Santa, which I am so happy about, and then 6 ink bottles were sold or given away this month. Then moving on to the totals for the month of December, I currently have 76 ink samples. I have 37 ink bottles, and then lastly, I have 38 pens in total for the year. So now I'm going to do just a whole summary of 2023 in terms of what I have purchased, accumulated, etc. So firstly, I had purchased 31 pens this year, which is way more than the goal of only 1 a month. I was gifted 8 pens and I had sold 24. So 24 pens are sold or given away. Then in terms of ink samples, I had purchased 21 ink samples. My pen was running out here. So I purchased 21 ink samples. 112 ink samples were gifted to me, which I am so grateful for. And then I had used or given away 139 ink samples, so did pretty well with that number. And then for ink bottles, I had purchased 7, even though at the beginning of the year I said I wouldn't, and 9 were gifted to me and 17 were used, sold, or given away. So very good totals to see. So what a year for my fountain pen and ink purchases. I'm actually really glad to do a summary like this compared to what the beginning of the year goals were. And I totally did not abide by my goals at the beginning of the year. But looking at where my collection is now versus where I was a year ago, I am very happy with the purchases that I've made and the pens that I've sold or the inks that I've used. So I think this whole year was great for me in terms of exploring and acquiring, and I haven't set a specific goal for myself yet for 2024, but we'll see what happens from that point on. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions about the update or the progress report, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching, and look out for a video that will be a full flip through of this notebook coming in the next week or so. Thank you so much and have yourselves a great day.